The imperfect king. I told you yesterday that there was a prophetic reason why the story of Joseph is interrupted in chapter 38 of the Genesis with the story of Judah and Tamar. And that's because the Torah here is giving us an outright connection between the Messiah ben Yosef, the Messiah son of Joseph, and the Messiah ben David, the Messiah, the son of David. The two are connected, and it just goes to show you that right here at this point in the story, we have the interjection of Judah, and it's important where this is interjected because it's at specifically the time at which Joseph is sold into slavery. So I want to come back to that in a minute and explain why that's an important connection. So good morning. Glad you're here. Welcome to our Aliyah, the fifth day of the week. We should be in the fifth Aliyah, but we've been running behind this week because there's so much to unpack in this story. So we're really in the fourth Aliyah, and I'm kind of not sorry about that, just because there's so much good stuff. But and just when I think I've covered all the bases, there's more. There's always will be more. So welcome. Glad you're here. Please like the video, subscribe to our channel, strike the bell so that you can be a part of what happens here on a daily basis, and comment on this video. Let me know your thoughts about what you've been hearing. Many of you have been watching the videos this week, and I think being blessed by the content, and I'm very glad for that. As we get into this, I was thinking this morning, there are people out there who are either unaware of all of this ancient rabbinic literature and other rabbinic commentaries from the Middle Ages or what have you, whether it be the Midrash, the Talmud, the Zohar, Ramban's commentary, or Chaim, Rashi, Mayam Loez, Rabbi Monk, a bit more contemporary, Rabbeinu Bachya, and the list goes on and on and on. There are people who are wholly unaware of this information. There are others who, even worse, are under the delusional belief that somehow it's just a bunch of teachings of men and nonsense. Maybe it's either irrelevant or wicked, because these are people, by the way, who don't know what they don't know. They just pretty much heard that on the internet from somebody who doesn't know what they don't know. And as a result, both groups, no matter what their situation, don't use this literature, don't use this information that dates back, 3,000-4,000 years. And it's just a crying shame because as I explore these commentaries, and have now for, over a decade, at least, and my biggest frustration right now is that I just can't seem to get to all the commentaries that I need to get to in a given day or week. It's just too much. And then what I'm able to glean in the time that I have is just incredibly rich. I don't even know how, and not to get off topic here, but I just don't even know how you can even begin to comprehend what the Bible is teaching, and particularly, most especially, the teachings of the Messiah. I don't even know how you even remotely try to get close to that without this amazing literature and these amazing backstories and insights and what have you. It's just, I don't know. I feel so. I honestly and truly feel sorry for people, and that's part of the Lapid mission. Part of the Lapid mission is to help people get connected to these sources. Some people who, and by the way, this is just an aside. Some people who hate us because of our message, or whatever the reasons are, jealousy, their ministry didn't make it, or whatever it is, whatever the reason is, some of the lashon hara that's thrown at us from time to time and it's just loony, is that we're like a cult. Ooh. And of course, that's absurd. It's ridiculous. But one of the reasons why we're not a cult, aside from the fact that we're not, but one of the reasons for that is that, cults, there's usually a leader, and pretty much everybody just does whatever he says. And a lot of what he says is not based in any level of reality. It doesn't, he's a cult leaders don't read from sources. They are the source. And they're nutcases, basically, and Looney Tunes, and they're pretty easy to spot, actually. If you're a rabbi and you're basically leading people into pretty much normative Judaism, which is what we do here, how is that a cult? But more importantly, cult leaders typically don't ask people to think for themselves. They don't encourage people to use common sense and logic. They don't encourage people to build a library full of sources so that you can read the very same literature that they are reading, right? They don't do that. So for those of you out there who might come across, and this just popped in my mind as I'm talking about sources, it really is not pertaining to any specific issue of late. It's just, if you're out there, you're stumbling around and you read Lashon Hara about us or me or we, and it says, "Oh, stay away, they're a cult." That's another reason I want you to educate yourself. Like, don't be that naive and gullible. Like, understand what the word means. Look it up in the dictionary. That way you can be on guard from all of the crazy stuff that's out there. And I'll tell you something, our world is crazy. I'm getting off track here, I know, but just, do you feel me out there? Give me a thumbs up if you feel me. Okay. All right, good. Now listen, chapter 38 is where we have the story of Judah and Tamar. And I titled our class today, "The Imperfect King," because and as I look at the story of Tamar and Judah, I just marvel at the types and shadows of Messiah we have here. And then I also, all in this story, there is this overarching theme. And we've had this theme before, particularly when we were talking about, Lot and his daughters. Terrible situation. Incest. We have Moab and Ammon that come from that. And it's just icky stuff. It's grody. Like, oh, yikes. That's so bad. And yet, from that very relationship, from that very union, comes the Messiah, ultimately. Vis-a-vis Ruth. And Ruth is a product, ultimately, you understand that Ruth is a product of the Lot and his daughter's situation. And so we have this grand dichotomy in the entire messianic idea. And that is that the Messiah, the Mashiach of Israel, is a perfect Zaddik. And yet, his lineage is all stained and tainted. It is very much an imperfect lineage. And see, this goes back to what I have harped on with you and I for a while. And that is that people who are perfect do not inspire us. Okay? People who are perfect do not inspire. People who've never made a mistake, which, by the way, no such person exists, but you know what I mean. People who never make a mistake, people who are, don't know what you're talking about. I've never had a bad thought. I've never gotten angry. When somebody cuts me off in traffic, I just bless them. That kind of lie. Those people, we don't, here's the thing. Just, and you know what? You tell me if I'm wrong. And maybe I am, and maybe I am wrong, and maybe you would say you would disagree with me. And if that's okay. If you have a different point of view, that's okay. I'm going to suggest, this is my strong opinion, we don't go to those kinds of people for counseling. We don't go to those kinds of people for counseling. We don't go to perfect people and say, you know, I've really struggled in my life. How did you overcome this? Oh, I forgot. You've never had a bad relationship. Oh, I forgot. You've never had a mistake. Oh, I forgot. You grew up with a silver spoon in your mouth, and you're a perfect Jew. You're a super Jew. How could that? I'm gonna ask you a question. How could such a person counsel you? How could they give you any advice whatsoever? They just all they could do is shrug their shoulders and go, I don't know. I've never. Sorry, I don't know. I can't relate to that. Right. You don't go to those people. Now you do go to successful people, but you go through to successful people who have been there, done that. It's like I've mentioned this before, but you may be shocked to know. I think my father was telling me this a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, that investors do not invest in people, people who are starting companies who have never failed. Did you know that? What? I know it's counterintuitive. You may be thinking, well, that seems weird. Like, wouldn't you want to invest in the guy who is a sure thing? No, because life isn't a sure thing. And therefore, you want to put your money with somebody who is successful, yes, but who has known the sting of failure and was able to overcome that failure. That's who you want to put your money on, not the clown who's never experienced failure, because it's inevitable and you don't know how they're going to react to it. Now, you're going to ask me a question here. Rabbi, this is all great. I thought we came here to talk about Judah and Tamar. We are. You don't wonder why in the book of Hebrews, the letter there, why does it emphasize that we have a great high priest who is able to relate to us because he was tempted in every way and yet was sinless? Why does it emphasize that? Because we cannot relate to perfect people. It doesn't inspire us. It doesn't motivate us. And this is an encouragement for you. The reason I'm telling you this is because I want you to be encouraged. Because sister no good and brother holier than thou will make you feel like, because you've had some issues in your life, that you're not fit to serve God. And I'm here to tell you that if you've had issues in your life and you've had some challenges and some failures and some faults, you are the perfect one to serve God, which is why we have Judah and Tamar. Now, Yeshua was perfect. Yeah, that's true. But he also had to come down here and deal with imperfection in order to be able to relate to us. That's one of the reasons why there was a manifestation, an incarnation. And this is why people who say that God would never do that. Yes, he would. And it was necessary. Why? Because how can God judge us if he hasn't been us? What? Yeah. By the way, there's a rabbi, I forget who it was. I want to say Rabbi Torsi talks about it. I think I've read it in other sources, but I wish I could remember the particular rabbi's name, but it doesn't really matter. The principle is that before he would judge anybody, he would dress in their clothes, because his mindset was, how can I judge somebody if I haven't walked literally in their shoes? Which is, by the way, why we're not supposed to judge people. You say, well, if I were them, I would have done that. How do you know? Were you raised in their house? Did you grow up in their life? Did you face that specific challenge with that specific context? No, you didn't. Well, I've done something similar. Great. Was it the exact same? No, shut up. You see? And so the rabbi would say, I can't judge anybody unless I've walked in their shoes. So he would literally dress like them. which is what God did. God said, how can I judge mankind if I haven't been them? So he dressed like us. You see the principle? So again, what does this have to do with Judah? It's so exciting to me. It's so wonderful because Judah is a mess. And yet from him, we get the king who rules over kings. So first of all, we have the very first prophetic insight here. It says, it was at that time that Judah went down from his brothers and turned away towards to an Aldamite man whose name was Hira. So Rashi explains that this account happened, interrupting the story of Joseph to teach us that the brothers deposed Judah for his leadership when they saw the grief of their father. They said to Judah, it is you who told us to sell him. How had you told us to bring him back home, we would have listened to you, because you're the king, you're the leader. And Sforno emphasizes more explicitly that Judah's responsibility in the action taken against Joseph, he was culpable, and his culpability rather was great, it says, and his wrongdoing in destroying the peace of the family now turned against him. And so basically all the brothers turn against him. So what's the first and foremost, what's the first prophetic thing we say here? Judah, which is the tribe from which the name Jew comes from, is blamed for the death of Joseph. But wait a minute. Weren't all the other brothers involved here? Yes. But here's the prophetic picture. The Jews get blamed. Now, all the brothers are ultimately Jews. You understand that? But I'm talking by way of analogy. We are all responsible for rejecting the Messiah. But yet, the Jews get blamed. Okay? Number two, prophetically, when we rejected Yeshua, we not only rejected Messiah ben Yosef, but we also rejected Messiah ben David, which Judah represents. So that's number two. Number three, as I mentioned, the placement of this story. This story does not occur when Joseph goes to prison. This story does not occur when he arrives at Egypt. The story does not occur later when he gets elevated to the throne. At what point does this story occur? At what point does it happen? The answer is it happens when the brothers kill Joseph. Now, I keep saying kill Joseph, and you may be asking yourself, they didn't kill him, though. They just sold him into slavery. But you have to understand something. As far as they were concerned, they were killing him. Because, okay, we're not going to literally kill him because we want to be able to say we didn't pull the trigger. But what they're going to do, they're going to sell him into slavery, and they figure it's a matter of time before he will be killed. At the very least, he will be dead to us. Okay? So what we see here is the very moment that there is a descent of Messiah ben Joseph, and he is killed by the brothers, there is simultaneously a descent of Messiah ben David. Why? Because they're connected. Notice that it says here, Judah went down, and the Rabbi Monk says, coming after the sale of Joseph, Judah's moral downfall occurs. This is he's quoting from Targum Yonatan. So isn't it interesting prophetically that at the moment that Joseph is killed, Judah has a fall? Why? Because the two are linked together. Okay. So it says here, the future seems tragically jeopardized and the horizon very bleak. However, the history of our people teaches us with numerous examples that providential help comes just at the moment of deepest despair. For God creates the cure before the illness. This is from Megillah 13b. So what we see here is that, and this is true for your life, it's true for my life, right when things seem the darkest and it seems like, man, there's no hope from here, that's exactly when the light bursts forth. We've been reading from Isaiah 61-3. We've been proclaiming that over our movement and over our synagogue locally specifically. And what does it say there? It says, even though darkness covers the earth and deep darkness the people, behold, your light is rising. Your Light is dawning. Where and Hanukkah, we're about to celebrate Hanukkah, is the perfect illustration of that, because during the darkest time of the year, where it starts getting dark at like 4:30, 5 o'clock, that's when the light begins to shine. And it's so therefore it's no wonder that Hashem is speaking to us prophetically about Isaiah 60, verse 1 through 3 at this time, as opposed to speaking to us about it in, let's say, June, okay, or Savan. But it says here, now listen, he creates the cure before he creates the illness, before beginning the exile, which is what, remember, the cell of Joseph, that starts the exile, just like the crucifixion of Yeshua started the exile. The exile didn't start in 70 AD or later in 123. It started the day we crucified the Messiah, just like it started the day that we killed Joseph. Okay. So it says, before beginning the first exile, providence was preparing the light of the ultimate Redeemer. And so, just as the sale of Joseph to Egypt led to the Egyptian exile, the Torah mentions Judah's marriage, the marriage from which will come Peretz, the forefather of the kingly line of the house of David, ancestor of the Messianic dynasty. Therefore, Rabbi Monk goes on to say, the greatest purpose of history are born in the secret of silence, unknown to anyone. For blessing reigns only upon that which is hidden from sight. Okay? Guys, this is such an important thing, because you and I sometimes don't realize that out of darkness and trial and tribulation and issues and whatnot comes our greatest blessing. Our greatest blessing. My dad talks about this. My father talks about that. He was going through a particular trial in his life, a very difficult situation. He was going to get a job, and he was very much looking forward to it. It was going to be a great paying job, a high paying job, a very, prestigious job. And circumstances of life hit him, and he wasn't able to get that job. He was devastated. He was disappointed. He was frustrated. He prayed, asked HaShem, why? And as a result of that, though, it led him to begin to do something different, and he ended up inventing a machine to rejuvenate flooring. And later, just a few years later, would end up selling that idea to a major, international company. And of course, the rest is proverbial history. But my dad points out that had I not had that great disappointment, that very dark moment in my life, seemingly very dark moment, it was terrible, then that other wouldn't have happened. And I can say the same thing about myself. There's what led me in the ministry was really a similar type of thing. I was headed down a career path. I really thought that's what I wanted to do. And, circumstances hit. I wasn't able to do that. I was deeply, deeply disappointed. And through that, God redirected me. I would not be here today if that, that at the time, deep disappointment, very deep disappointment, hadn't have happened. So in our great disappointment, a lot of times, in fact, almost always, rises the blessings from God, because they're hidden from our sight. And I know that you can relate to me right now. I know there's many of you right now probably talking about on the chat. I'm not really paying too much attention to that right now, but I know that a lot of you are saying, man, that's me. That's me. I can relate to that. Of course you can. And as you should. And don't let Debbie Downer or Brother I Know It All get you down. I'll tell you right now, man, I've known too many of them, and hashtag irrelevant. So just move on down the road. Now listen, it says here, Bat Ish Kanani. Remarkably, and wrap your head around this for me if you can, okay? Now we all know that from Judah comes Messiah. I mean, that's if you don't know that, then that's remarkable. But if in case you don't know that, here it's true. From Judah is going to come the Messiah. Okay. Lion of the tribe of Judah, etc. Okay. Now, we all know, I need to stop saying that because we may not all know. So pardon me for assuming. We learn in the Torah that one of the big ickies of Esau was that he married Canaanite women and Egyptian women and things, and that's the thing that just turned Rebekah's stomach. She even told Isaac, I am sick to death of these wives of Esau. So, and we also learn in the Torah that Abraham forbade his servant from finding Isaac a wife from the Canaanite women. And of course, Jacob too. Jacob couldn't go find a wife. He had to go on this long journey way away to go find somebody who's not a Canaanite. So marrying Canaanite women, bad. Okay. Real bad. What does Judah do? He marries a Canaanite woman. Unbelievable. The very people that Joshua is later going to annihilate, Yeshua is going to annihilate, he marries. Now, listen to this. It says, why is this the case? Well, it talks about the fact, which we covered already. It talks about the royal lineage of the house of David. The maternal side has already been tainted. And it goes into the story of Lot and his daughters and all of that. So we got that right. So you would think, all right, so the maternal line is tainted. That's kind of weird, but okay. Well, guess what? God wanted it to be that the paternal line was also going to be tainted. What? Yeah. Listen to what Rabbi Monk says. It says, now, just as the maternal side of the dynasty of the future Messianic king was tainted by sin, so too the paternal side was affected by Judah's wrongdoing. He married a Canaanite woman, and this was the beginning of his fall. As the Torah shows, he cohabitated with his daughter-in-law, and from this forbidden union came Peretz, the paternal ancestor of David. So on both sides of the line of Messiah, both the paternal side and the maternal side, we have forbidden unions, we have sin, we have lust, we have basically incest on both sides. We have a mingling of Canaanite blood, Moabite blood, Ammonite blood, idolatry. I mean, this story here is about Judah who sleeps with Tamar because he thinks she's a harlot. And that is the lineage of Messiah. And it's really, this is why I say, it's an imperfect king. Now, Messiah is a perfect king, don't get me wrong. But this is why you and I can connect to the Mashiach. And this is why he can connect to us. And if anybody is like, how can God use me? Just look at this story. God does not use perfect people. He uses imperfect people perfectly. His very lineage is not perfect. And this is the exciting part. This is the inspirational part. This is the powerful part. And this is why, sister know-it-all and brother, I'm better than you. This is why they never succeed. Okay? It says, now listen to this. Now this is the hammer. This is the mic drop I'm about to share with you right now. And there's many more insights. We'll see. Time flies when you're in this kind of stuff. But listen to this is the mic drop. Listen to this. In order to understand the minds of all men of all races, in order to inspire them with a deep love of God, the future Redeemer of mankind, the Messiah, will no doubt have to carry a drop of non-Jewish blood in his veins. And in order to be the supreme arbiter of justice and altruistic love, he must also witness error and sin right in the ranks of his own family. This comports with what it was written in the letter to the Hebrews, that we have a Messiah who's able to relate to us. And the reason he's able to relate to all mankind, the reason he can call Gentiles and say, become Jews, is because he knows what it's like, because in his lineage are many, many, many converts. And the reason that God loves the converts so, so much is because he remembers those in his lineage. He remembers Ruth. He remembers Tamar. He remembers Bachya, the mother of Moses from the Egyptian royal family. He remembers Jethro. He remembers Obadiah. He remembers Sarah. He remembers Rebecca. He remembers Rachel. He remembers Leah. He remembers Zilha. He remembers Bilhah. He remembers these people who had to overcome seemingly insurmountable odds, overcome the lust and the temptation of idolatry in order to come under the wings of the Shekinah. And he understands the pressure that they were under, and that's why he loves them so much. And he made them a part of the line of Messiah. Tamar was a convert. Philo of Alexandria tells us that Tamar was brought up amongst idolaters, but converted on her own. Or, well, we don't know if it was on her own exactly, but anyway, she converted to belief in one God. In other words, she came to this, much like Bachya, who was the daughter of Pharaoh. It talks about this in Sota 10a, by the way, that she kind of came to this realization. And Rabbi Monk points out that Tamar's character was very much related to Rebecca. She was willing to go to seemingly any means necessary, even to be a bit deceptive. But her motive was pure in that she was being deceptive because she wanted to be in this family. She wanted to be part of the covenantal people. She wanted to be part of the solution. And so she married the first son, and he was wicked, and he died. She married the second son, and he was wicked, and he died. And then Judah said, stick around. When Shelah gets a little bit older, I'll give you to him son. But, Judah thought there was something wrong with Tamar. And so he wasn't willing to give his third son because he thought she's like a black widow. She's killing my boys. But Tamar would not be deterred, and she wanted to be in this family. There's an interesting insight here that talks about the fact that she went to sit at the crossroads. And so the implication on the Peshat level of the Torah seems to be that she was out there to be a harlot, to pretend to be a harlot. And that's possibly true. But it's also a little bit problematic because perhaps some other men would have come along and say, hey, I'll give you this or that, the other to sleep with me. Of course, she's not going to sleep with them. So how does she deny other customers, right? That would be a little suspicious. So one of the commentators says that, the sages explain actually, that she actually went to the specific crossroads. This is also from the Tractate Sota 10a in the Talmud. She went to where Abraham was buried because she went there to pray at the tomb of the forefather or the patriarchs. She went there to intercede because she wanted to be a part of this family. She wanted to be in this lineage. And thus far, it seemingly wasn't working out. So she goes there and she intercedes, and there's a whole discourse. I don't have time to get into it right now, but it just talks about the virtue of converts and how precious they are, and usually the fervent heart they have for the things of God. But then along comes Judah. And all of and I really hadn't had a chance to dive into the fact that all of this is providential. All of this is God's plan. And that's the other thing in life. We have to be careful. It's a fine, and I don't really know how to articulate it exactly, because it's a fine line. Because on the one hand, we're supposed to disdain sin and so forth, and we are. And yet, on the other hand, more often than not, these things that we fall into, it's part of providence. So it's a very delicate balance, and I think that we have to be careful, to say, yeah, we're supposed to hate that and really run from it, and we are. And on the other hand, recognize that if we look back at our history as a people, we see very often that these horrible things that we fall into, God uses them, and sometimes, and we're going to see here, it's a very hard to wrap our mind around this, but sometimes he sets us up for it, because he knows that out of this horrible, horrible thing is going to come something much better. It's hard for us to comprehend that. I totally get it. There's many examples. I mean, we talk extensively about David and Bathsheba. Well, what came of David and Bathsheba? You would expect that from the David and Bathsheba story, Bathsheba would be kind of, she marries the king because that's maybe the right thing to do and all this kind of stuff. But she gets put on the back 40. She gets put out the pasture because, man, you're not going to bring the king from that. I mean, think about it. David had other wives that he was legally and properly married to, Abigail being one of them. Abigail was a great woman. Why didn't the king come from her? But from Bathsheba, we get Solomon, and from Solomon, we get Mashiach. I don't know. I'm not God. Now, I bring this up because the insights tell us something very fascinating, hard for us to wrap our head around. But it says that Judah is walking, and he's going to walk by this woman who he doesn't recognize and who is seemingly a harlot. He's going to walk by her. But then here's what it says in Midrash Rabbah 85. But God sent an angel of lust and said to him, "Where are you going, Judah? From where then will the kings come, and from where will the Redeemer come?" And so it says that an angel of lust came upon him, and through this mysterious providential action, he cohabitated with Tamar, and from her would come the Redeemer. Now, you may be asking yourself, God doesn't do that. Well, yes, he does. It says it clearly in the book of Chronicles that God tempted, Chronicles and Samuel, there's a duplicate story. But it says that God himself, one version says God himself, I think that's in Samuel, and in Chronicles it says that God told Satan to entice David to sin and take a census. And so he did, and because of that, a great plague happened. But the end result of that was that David built the altar. First of all, he purchased the threshing floor, which would become the Holy of Holies, and then he built the altar. Sometimes HaShem has to entice us to fail so that we can be successful. And, think about what I just said there, because that is seemingly a contradictory statement, and yet there's so much truth in it. We see it. Sometimes he has to entice us to fail so that we will be successful. The story I just mentioned about my dad is true. My dad had to fail in that endeavor so that he could become successful. Had he not failed, he would not have become a success. This is true of so many successful people. I've seen it in my own life. I know you have too. And for those of you who are saying, no, 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 no way, no way, no way, why do you think it says in the so-called Lord's Prayer, lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil? Why does he say that? Because there's nothing new in the New Testament. We don't want this to be our journey. And we don't. But sometimes it is. And that's where we go blue screen. So it says here, she asked him as a down payment, or as a payment rather, for her services. She asked him for three things, and those three things are not by happenstance, they're prophetic. Your signet, your wrap, and your staff. And it says here, the three objects which would later become part of her heritage: the signet of the ring of royalty, the coat of a judge for the Sanhedrin, and the scepter of Messiah. Now, I've got to end it now because we're over time. All week long we've been over time, but I don't know. It just is what it is. But of course, she ends up becoming pregnant. She's brought before Judah, and Judah, condemns her to be burned, and she presents to him the signet and the robe and the scepter, and says, "I am with child by the man to whom these belong." And of course, Judah recognizes that those are his. There's a whole statement in here in Rabbi Monk's commentary. If you have Rabbi Monk's commentary on page 521, I encourage you to read the main paragraph in the middle of the page, where it begins, "And she was taken out, and she sent word to her father-in-law." There's a paragraph here about how the Satan hid these three things from her because Satan was doing his best to try to keep the messianic line from coming forth, and he wanted her to be killed. But she miraculously, through God's help, of course, miraculously found these three items. And so it's a really great insight if you haven't read it. But I just want to come back to this because Judah makes teshuvah, and it's a beautiful lesson to us. And I'm going to beg your indulgence for a few more minutes here as I read this, because it's another great life lesson. So it said, he was sitting there amongst the tribunal. Understand, the judges with whom he was sitting, it says here, were part of Shem's tribunal. And Judah was one of the judges. Can you imagine the humility this would have taken? And this is a wonderful lesson for us. When he saw those three items and he realized that those are my things, this Tamar is pregnant by me, he stood up and he said, "With your permission, my brothers, I proclaim here and now that man is dealt with measure for measure, for it is good or bad. But happy is he who recognizes his sin." And ladies and gentlemen, this is where the warriors are. The warriors are not the ones who point the finger at people. The warriors are the ones who are able to step up, stand up, and proclaim and confess and recognize their sin. The warrior is not the one who has no sin. The warrior is the one who's able to overcome it. Understand that, know that, believe that, trust that. So it says here, "It has come upon me because I dipped Joseph's coat in the blood of a goat and brought it to my father and said, 'Please identify it. Is this your son's or not?' That I must now identify these things before the tribunal. To whom does this ring and this robe and this scepter belong? It has come upon me because of this. But it is better to be humiliated and punished in this world than in the next. So I acknowledge that Tamar is indeed innocent, and she is pregnant from me, not because she yielded to any illicit passion, but because I did not give her my son Shelah." When Judah finished speaking, a voice rang out from the heavens and proclaimed, "You both are innocent, for all of this has been the divine will that has come to pass." So it says Judah was rewarded for admitting his sin publicly and removing suspicion from his brothers. For then one who was able to have his share in the world to come, Judah's eldest brother, Reuben, followed this example and formally confessed his sin to his father, thus clearing his brothers of suspicion. God definitively associated his own name with Judah's name, thereby showing his affection for those who have the moral courage to confess their sins publicly. Soda 10b. You see, ladies and gentlemen, when we conceal our sin and we pretend that we're perfect when we're not, when we condemn other people who failed, pretending and making it seem like we haven't, we are moral cowards. And we're fakers and liars. And the truth is not in us. But when we are like Judah, and we can stand up and say, God, forgive me, for I am a sinner, then we are courageous and biblical heroes. And ironically, that's what makes us righteous. End of our Aliyah today. Thank you for indulging me and staying over. It's we went way later, even later than we have been going, but I think it's just so much information. And so much good encouragement. I hope you're encouraged. Like the video, subscribe to our channel, comment, let me know your thoughts on this video, and please donate to us. I'm asking you for your contribution to help us to continue to do what we do. And listen, don't trust that somebody else will do it. I'm asking you, if you're listening to me right now, I'm asking you to use the text to give number or use the link on our website to donate. Please donate to us. And let's all make a difference in the world. God bless you. Shalom Aleichem. We'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow as we close out our week.